Hello there, and welcome to the Artificers Guild, a home for anyone interested in Valve's upcoming TCG, Artifact. I am Divog, and today we are going over the news from the past week in our news recap. This week, a number of members of the press, as well as YouTube personalities, have been invited to Valve, seemingly to test Artifact. While we might have hoped for a full game to be shown, so far the only reports from this week of playtests have shown that it looks to be the same demo that we saw back in March. However, even in its demo state, no two games of Artifact are the same, and we've been able to glean some new information from these reports. As there is a lot to go through, I've tried to break this down into categories. Firstly, we'll be looking at the lore, then the game mechanics for heroes, spells and items, then some more information about any new cards, and finally onto a few miscellaneous bits that didn't particularly fit into any category. But before we get started, there's one bit of miscellaneous news that I wanted to explain first. There's been a lot of fear-mongering regarding the payment model Valve will choose for Artifact. No one wants to be paying hundreds of pounds, dollars, euros or whatever for a new deck every time an expansion drops. Richard Garfield explained their plan a little better in an interview with Eurogamer. He explained that common cards will be the most useful ones. They will be the cards that you need to be able to play the game competitively, while rarer cards will be there to add a bit of extra spice to your deck. He compared it to the purchasing of golf clubs. While the most expensive set of clubs will give you the edge if you are evenly matched, I think Rory McIlroy, or Tiger Woods if you haven't followed golf for about a decade, would be able to beat me with a child's plastic pitch and putt club, even if I had the best set of golf clubs in the world. What Richard is trying to say here is that there will be a payment aspect, but it will be tailored so that the better player will always beat the weaker one, no matter how much they spend on the game. When Jeep Barnett was asked about other influential members of Valve putting their stamp on Artifact, the question was initially focused on IceFrog's interactions with the game. However, IceFrog is rather busy at the moment. I don't know if you've heard of the game he's looking after, but I believe it's called Dota or something. However, Jeep does go on to explain that they've had a writer from the Dota team working on Artifact. Steve Jaros, the writer behind much of the Saints Row series, has joined Valve and has been writing on parts of Dota of late. It turns out that his focus has actually been on preparing the Dota world for the lore of Artifact. This would suggest that Artifact will have a big part to play in the lore of the Dota world. This is something we actually theorised in our first video on the channel, but it turns out we weren't even close. Artifact isn't here to give us lore about the Dota world. Artifact is inside the Dota world. The cards themselves are manifested in this world through some sort of unknown magic, and will be related to the events that happen within it. This would be as if Hearthstone got a new set based on each World of Warcraft expansion. Jeep then goes on to explain the first event to us. It is focused on a three-way conflict. The main battle is between the Bronze Legion, under the dutiful Tresdin, the Legion commander, and the Red Mist, an Oglodi horde that was once the home of Mogul Khan, everyone's favourite axe, but is now under the command of his ex-partner, Solar Khan. During the conflict, the Bronze Legion has occupied a Vul forest city, and while its populace is largely subdued, Rex is planning to rebel against their Legion oppressors. This already seems like a fantastic story to start with, and I'm already very excited to see the next card set, which should give us the next stage of this story. Our prediction that Artifact would flesh out the lore of the Dota world wasn't entirely misplaced though. Just as in Dota 2, heroes will have voice lines as they interact with the world and the characters around them. One teased set of interactions is between Axe and Legion Commander. When on the same team, Legion Commander will call to Axe, saying that with their powers combined they can take on any foe. But if they are matched against one another, in the same lane, Legion Commander will reference Axe's betrayal. Each card will have many voice lines of lore for us to dive into, and I can't wait to know more about the magical world of Dota. News of the mechanics about the game are incredibly important right now, as we currently have little idea as to how the game is played. So many of us are already really hyped about the game, but we don't even know if we'll enjoy how it plays out. However, we can all relax and rejoice, safe in the knowledge that the game mechanics will largely be controlled by us, the players, and not by some unseen force known only as RNG. Richard Garfield explained in his interview that he does believe that RNG is good for card games, but it absolutely has to be done correctly. RNG needs to be at the player's command. It needs to exist in order to allow the game to play out differently every time you load up, but it needs to help separate the higher skill players from their lower peers, rather than allow the underdog playing their first ever game to accidentally beat the best player in the world. For everything random in Artifact, there is a measure to control it. Pathing can be changed by a number of means, giving you greater control as to where you are attacking and defending. Creep spawns can also be affected by spells, and even heroes, which in itself is new information, as so far there's no hero with the power to let you control or even interact with creeps, so keep an eye out for that one. We also learned that you'll be able to control the camera with WASD, as well as your mouse, and that you can hide user interface options, such as the shop or your deployment heroes, so that you can better see the board. Valve have always had a plethora of fantastic control options in their game, and I don't think that's going to change with Artifact. The card limits have also been discussed. While we've been told for a long time there is no maximum number of cards you can have on a board or in your hand, We all assume there must be some sort of limit. Well, Jeep explains that there really isn't. In fact, a couple of years ago, one of their developers, a mystical being known only as Dave, put 20,000 cards on his side of the board to see what would happen. Well, they left it to play overnight, and just 8 hours after the game started, his 20,000 strong board won. Now, we won't be seeing 20,000 cards in our boards for sure, but it's nice to know that the game engine can hold as much as it likes. Just to note, this was also about 2 years ago. 2 years ago they were able to complete a full 8-hour match with over 20,000 cards. This gives you some sort of idea as to how long Valve have been working on Artifact in the background. As we know, each deck contains 5 heroes, and of those 5, 3 of them are placed from the start of the game. Now many people have probably already imagined that the other 2 heroes will come out during the next 2 turns, but this has now been confirmed. Your 4th hero will be deployable on turn 2, and your 5th hero will be deployable on turn 5. We also got to see some more interesting mechanics when deploying heroes. In the Eurogamer playtest, we see them try to deploy 2 heroes, Rix and Zeus, into the same slot on the board. Well, only Rix went into that slot, and the Zeus was placed in the rightmost available space. This shows that deployment of cards isn't like Hearthstone, where you can nudge cards already on the field to the left or right. In Artifact, you have to play around them. When your heroes die, you need to wait for them to respawn. While this is old news, we got some more detail about how this actually happens. When a hero dies, it goes to the fountain, which in Artifact is essentially a queue for your heroes who are not on the board at the current moment. With the exception of Rix, all heroes will currently take 1 whole turn in the fountain before they can be redeployed. This assumably means, if you send a hero to the fountain with a TP scroll, they will also be there for the remainder of that turn. We also got to see a quality of life measure from the user interface with regard to heroes. If you hover over a unit's stats, you'll be able to see how they got to the current scores you see. The example we see of this in the Eurogamer video is a bristleback with 10 attack. By hovering over the attack value on the card, we get to see that 8 attack is from its base stats, and another 2 came from the red spell called Combat Training. This should help anyone who doesn't have a PhD in mathematics have a fighting chance at playing Artifact. We got to learn a lot more about the shop and the items it sells in this round of playtests. The shop consists of 3 sections, 1 section for consumables, 1 for any random item in the shop, and a final section that contains cards you bring with you in an item deck. This first slot for consumables was reported as being the leftmost slot in the shop window, but gameplay from Eurogamer shows that the Shield of Basilius is in the left slot, and that's an armor item. After reviewing all of the gameplay footage so far, this appears to be a recurring theme. So the rightmost item in your shop will be one of 4 consumables. So far I've seen Potion of Knowledge, Time Portal Scroll, and Healing Salve, which leaves us 1 more consumable that will be available. Perhaps this last one will be a Fountain Flask. As for all the currently confirmed items, this is the next cheapest consumable. The leftmost slot of the shop, therefore, is the random item. This can be from any of the types, weapon, armor, health, or consumable, and represents some of the RNG in Artifact. The final and central slot is your item deck. The item deck is something you create before the game and bring with you. It must contain at least 9 items, but like everything else in the game, it has no maximum. There is also a tooltip just above the slot that lets you know how many items are left in your item deck, which is a nice way to keep track of something that's not really a focal point of the game, yet still vitally important. Items might seem like an unnecessary complication to some, but one of the developers, Carlucci, and I'm sorry if I got your name wrong there, summed them up perfectly in a discussion with the team at Rock Paper Shotgun. All colours have specific powers and weaknesses, and the item deck is there to circumvent that. It provides a balance, and it will be an integral part of Artifact. The only information we got about spells relates to the hero-specific spells that we've theorised about. GP explained to RPS that each hero has a premier spell that comes with them. 3 of these premier cards are included in your deck, so 15 cards in your deck are already set from the beginning, as each of your 5 heroes will bring 3 copies of their premier spell with them. Carlucci expands this by explaining the hero cards and their premier counterparts are a package deal. He uses Zeus as an example. If you really like Thunder's God's Wrath, but you don't like Zeus, you don't really have that option. This also works in the reverse though. If you want to play around the hero Zeus, you will have to include 3 copies of Thunder God's Wrath in your deck, even if it doesn't fit into any of your win conditions. With regard to new cards, we finally got some concrete information about the limits. As we all expected when we were told there were 48 heroes when the game will be released, we now know that there will be 12 heroes for each colour. Now with some extrapolation of information, we can already account for 7 or 8 blue heroes. So for some colours, we already know what a large amount of their decks will look like. It's almost scary to know that we are that close to having a more complete understanding of the game. We also heard that there will be around 75 cards in each colour's starting pool, which hints that there will either be an imbalance of some colours having more, or that the source, Rock Paper Shotgun, didn't have the time to individually count every card from every set. Starting off our new card information, we have the Trebuchet. Previously, it seemed though the trebuchet was something that spawned next to a tower and hit the enemy tower for 2 damage each turn. In the gameplay from Eurogamer, their opponent plays a trebuchet, and we see that our theories were pretty much right for a change. This card lets you spawn a trebuchet in any of your lanes that will deal 2 piercing damage to the enemy tower or ancient each time you start a phase in that lane. We finally got to see the full version of 2 cards that have only been glimpsed at before. The Savage Wolf Creep and Eclipse Premium spell cards were both shown on screen during the Eurogamer playtest. Savage Wolf is a 4 mana, green creep with 3 attack, 0 armor and 3 health. Its ability grants Savage Wolf +1 attack and +2 health after the combat phase. Eclipse is a blue premium spell card for Luna. While it hasn't actually been confirmed as a premium card, Luna's ability references Eclipse, and vice versa. So with this, and Eclipse being her ultimate in Dota 2, I think it's a fair assumption. Eclipse is a 6-cost spell that deals 1 piercing damage to a random enemy. However, each time Luna begins an action phase in a lane, this card generates 1 charge. For each 1 charge, the damage of Eclipse is increased by 1. It is still unclear, however, if this means all of the damage will be dealt to one target, or if it's spread randomly between enemies. As far as new cards go, all we're able to take away from the new releases is even more suggestions of one particular hero, or rather 4 heroes, coming to Artifact. If you watch the 9-minute gameplay video from Eurogamer, in the far bottom left corner, beyond the monitor, you will see some artwork on the desk. Meepo is seemingly holding cards at a table. We've now seen 3 or 4 pieces of Meepo artwork in relation to Artifact, as well as seeing 4 Meepo cards on the list of copyrighted Valve artwork. It is all but confirmed that we will be seeing everyone's favourite Geomancer, and I can't say that I'm too surprised. As well as being a crowd favourite, Meepo himself is the only Dota hero I can think of who is a collector of artifacts. Perhaps we'll even see a card called Meepo the Artificer. Speaking of fancy cards, like Meepo the Artificer, we also got some very exciting news about Artifact's future in this week. Jeep told us that we will be getting different cards for each hero, displaying them at a different time in their life as the story of Artifact progresses. We will see heroes pass away and be resurrected as zombies. We will see them grow in power, whether it be with new weapons or abilities, or we might even just see them in some sort of magical hat. Trust Valve to bring hats into the equation. With the news of more playtests coming, other personalities have been discussing Artifact. A podcast starring YouTuber Total Biscuit, former Hearthstone dev Jesse Cox, DJ Wheat and Jenna Bain brought up the subject of Artifact, and while they're about as clueless as us, if not more so, they seem most interested by the payment model of the game. They surmise that if the game had an upfront price tag and was less focused on buying hundreds of card packs for each new expansion, they would be very happy with that. This is of course pure conjecture, but it does show what people a little more removed from Artifact are hoping for, and games live and die by their casual player base. We also got some fantastic news about the way Artifact will look this week. Renowned Magic the Gathering artist, Mark Winters, has announced he'll be joining Valve as of next week. When Artifact fans approached him with congratulations, he was quick to agree that it might be obvious as to what game he's working on. Finally, I want to leave you with a message from Richard Garfield himself. In an interview, he was asked if Artifact is like Hearthstone. Richard went on to explain that Artifact has no hand or board limits, Artifact's game state changes constantly and radically, while full resets or clears are hardly ever achieved. When people first hear about Artifact, Hearthstone will be the natural comparison, but once they get their hands on it, they'll realise that it is, and I quote, as different from poker and bridge. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Artificer_Guild to get all of the latest news and updates surrounding the channel and Artifact itself. Also, you can like and subscribe, as it will really help our channel grow into the community we're looking to build here. I've been Divok of the Artificers Guild, and we will see you next time.